Last weekend, I went to the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens, and I was just mesmerized by this one exhibit in a greenhouse. It had these orchids that were hanging from the ceiling, and the orchids were, maybe 10, 12 inches. That's what would be above ground. And below the orchid were 4 to 5 feet of roots, this tangle of roots underground that you never see. All you see is this beautiful blooming orchid. But underneath was all this work going on where no one could see. It reminded me of every great performance I've ever seen and every great athlete, entrepreneur, academic, scientist that I've ever met. You read about them and you see the fruits of their labor. That is literally the fruit of their labor. You see the flower. You see how beautiful their work is. I remember reading stories by Joseph Conrad, for instance, and just master of the English language. And I think to myself, how does he do that? And I would look at the flower, and I think that's just the most miraculous flower I've ever seen. This book is miraculous. But then I thought, no, you know what? There has to be more there. So I started reading biographies about Conrad and found that he worked like a maniac, that he would write until 3 a.m. some nights, and he'd spend a day crafting 300 words or a paragraph or a sentence and then throw it away. And he was so intense that when he'd walk through the streets of a city, he couldn't take it because every face to him, he literally couldn't, he had to go home. Every face to him, he could feel the story behind their face. It was too much. His mind was always on. He could never stop. He was always working. He had this immense root system, underground, hidden away. And all we saw was the book. When I see a great athlete and I see him perform in high-pressure situations, an Olympian, I know there's a root system there, amazing root system. When I see a businessman and you see that he's made $10 million and you think, wow, what a lucky guy, and then you realize you dig a little deeper that he learned so much through a series of failures, that was his root system. So the last thing I'll tell you is when I was 20 years old, I got a membership at a golf course. It was a student membership, and I could play as much as I wanted as long as I walked. So I was a golf head for one summer. And every day, I'd wake up at 6 a.m., and I'd go walk 3 rounds of golf, 54 holes. I was young, didn't bother me at all. I felt like a tank. Nothing could stop me. I was a vegan at the time, ate nothing but vegetables, drank water. I could do it very easily. I got pretty good, too. I could break 80 pretty consistently for a while. I don't play anymore, and I suck, but I got to get back to building that root system. But anyways, every morning when I'd get there at 6 a.m., there was this kid. And this kid was maybe 12 years old. He was on the driving range. He was practicing every day that summer. Well, they had a tournament, maybe the middle of the summer, end of the summer. And I remember this kid just blew away the competition. And I was watching a little bit of it. I don't remember his name. I'm sure he played college somewhere if he stuck with it. Hell, he could even be on the tour. But I remember standing there watching him tee off, and he just 12-year-old blasting a tee shot, I don't know, 260, 70 yards. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but it looked that far. And I heard parents of the other kids say, oh my God, that guy, that little kid right there, he has so much God-given talent. He's a natural. I thought to myself, they just seen the orchid, I didn't think that then. But if I could go back in time, it's the same principle. They're just seeing the fruits of his labor. They're not seeing that root system he built at 6 a.m. every day as a 12-year-old throughout the summer. And then he'd be there, and then he'd play a few practice rounds in the afternoon. He was just working on his game every single day, building that root system. So I guess the point is, make sure you build that root system for whatever it is you love to do. You have to do that. Every killer I meet, I love roots because they're underground, they're hidden, it's in the dark, it's away, people ignore them. They don't think, you see a flower, you don't really think of the roots, do you? You see a performance, you don't really think of the roots of that performance. Well, I do. And you should start thinking, when you see somebody do something great, just assume the only difference between you and them is they've put in more work. Their root system is more advanced and thicker and denser and distributed more. They've done a lot more work. That's the way you have to think. And that's the only way you'll ever max out your natural ability.